So my friends, I want you to imagine this. I want you to imagine that you're in a real life adventure, like in a movie, where the hero faces insurmountable odds. Maybe you're fighting your arch nemesis who always ruins your day, and then later you find out it's actually you. You're the one ruining your own day. I want you to enter today's verses in Psalms chapter 34. And the caption for this chapter is pretty wild. It says, a Psalm of David, regarding the time he pretended to be insane in front of Abimelech, who sent him away. Now, I had to read that like 3 or 4 times to actually believe that's what it said. I'll encourage you to read this full chapter on your own, but today we're going to take a deeper look at verses 4, 5, and 8, where it says, I prayed to the Lord and he answered me. He freed me from all of my fears. Those who look to him for help will be radiant with joy. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Oh, the joys of those who take refuge in him. No shadow of shame will darken their faces. These verses aren't just poetic musings. They're like a survival kit for one of life's most challenging things. I want you to think of these verses as a spiritual Swiss Army knife, and they are handy in every situation. In these verses, we find a deep well of comfort and guidance. I want you to picture yourself facing a challenge. Maybe it's big or small. Maybe it's a difficult decision at work, a personal dilemma that you're going through. Maybe anxiety has you down, or maybe you're even just trying to navigate the supermarket parking lot on a busy day. Whatever it is, these verses remind us that there is a way to find peace and clarity amidst the chaos. The beauty of Psalm 34 lies in its simplicity and depth. It's like finding a hidden gem in a familiar path that you've walked 1,000 times. It speaks to us in a language that transcends the time and culture that we have difference today from when this was written. It offers a message of hope and deliverance that's as relevant today as it was a millennia ago. These verses are like a lighthouse in a stormy sea of life. I want you to picture it again. You're navigating through your daily routine, and suddenly, life throws you a curveball. Maybe you're laid off from your job. Maybe there's a different personal struggle, or just an unexpected turn of events. These verses act like that lighthouse and guide you through the fog of uncertainty. Now I want to break down these verses and take a closer look at the phrases inside of them. Let's start with, He freed me from all of my fears. Isn't it fascinating how these timeless words echo in modern sentiments? It's almost as if the psalmist knew about our 21st century anxieties. This verse isn't just about overcoming fear, it's about finding a sense of liberation in God's presence, a freedom that goes past time and space. And then there's the next part that says, those who look to him for help will be radiant with joy. No shadow of shame will darken their faces. This isn't just about having a good day, it's about having a joy that is so deep within us that it is visible. Now imagine walking to a room and lighting it up. Not because you flicked on a light switch, but because your inner joy and peace was infectious to those around you. This verse is about carrying a sense of divine confidence that no circumstance can dim. And then the next part is, taste and see that the Lord is good. Oh, the joys of those who take refuge in him. This isn't a call to literally taste test God. I mean, you can take communion if you want to, but this is actually an invitation to experience God's goodness in a tangible way. It's like savoring a perfectly brewed cup of coffee that not just warms up your body, but also your soul. It's about discovering the richness of God's presence in the everyday moments of life. Now we need to understand the context of Psalm 34 a little bit better. It adds layers to its meaning. David, the author, wasn't just composing these verses from a palace balcony when he was the king. He was likely in a cave or on a field, fleeing from King Saul. You can read about the entire encounter in 1 Samuel chapter 21, and David was about to be killed by the king, and he was trying to stay alive any way possible. This wasn't just a bad day at the office, this was a matter of life and death. I'll read to you 1 Samuel 21 verses 8 through 13. David asked Ahimelech, "Do you have a spear or sword? The king's business is so urgent that I didn't even have time to grab a weapon." You can imagine that he is literally fleeing for his life at this point. Ahimelech said, "I only have the sword of Goliath, the Philistine, who you killed in the valley of Elah." The priest replied, "It's wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. Take it if you want it, for there is nothing else here." "There is nothing like it," David replied. "Give it to me." So David escaped from Saul and went to King Achish of Gath, but the officers of Achish were unhappy about his being there. "Isn't this David, the king of the land?" they asked. "Isn't he the one people honor with dances, singing, 'Saul has killed his thousands and David his 10,000s'?" David heard these comments and was very afraid of what King Achish of Gath might do to him. So he pretended to be insane, scratching on doors and drooling down his beard. Now, this historical backdrop of the Psalms is a turbulent period in David's life before he became king. This was a time when Israel was changing not just politically and spiritually, and David's journey from shepherd to king was riddled with these challenges. Yet it was these very challenges that shaped his faith and character, like a spiritual boot camp that prepared him for the role of Israel's greatest king. And the geopolitical climate of this time was about as stable as a two-legged stool. Israel was constantly under threat from the neighboring nations, and the leadership was in flux. David's experience during this time reflected a microcosm of Israel's own struggles, a nation trying to find its new identity in a place among hostile neighbors. Understanding David's situation helps us appreciate the raw honesty and authenticity of his words. This wasn't just a poetic expression, it was a real man grappling with real fears, seeking refuge in his faith. It's a reminder that no matter how advanced our society becomes, our fundamental quest for hope and truth remain the same. Now, in today's world, we might not face the same dangers as King David. We have our own battles. Whether it's dealing with stress, anxiety, health scares, or issues in our relationships, we all face situations that test our courage and faith. These verses offer a blueprint for navigating these challenges. The verses teach us about the power of prayer and transformation that it can bring. When being weighed down by the worries of fears, turning to God in prayer can lift up the burden off of our shoulders. It's like offloading a heavy backpack during a long hike. The idea of being radiant with joy and having no shadow of shame speaks to the profound change that can occur within us if we truly trust in God. It's about a change of perspective where we can see our challenges not as insurmountable objects, but as opportunity for growth and deeper faith. Taste and see that the Lord is good encourages us to experience God's presence in our daily lives. It's an invitation to find God in the small things, in the beauty of nature, the kindness of a stranger, or quiet moments of reflection. It's about recognizing the myriad of ways that God speaks to us and shows us His love. Now, I want you to consider a real-life story of a man named Tim Tebow. He's a well-known athlete and a public figure. His journey in professional sports was marked by big highs and big lows, and it mirrors the essence of these verses. Tebow's steadfast faith amongst intense scrutiny and pressure exemplifies the joy and confidence that comes with taking refuge in God. Tebow's career was often under the microscope of public opinion. People celebrated his failures, but he showed how one's faith can remain unshaken despite external circumstances. His ability to maintain a positive attitude and use his platform to inspire and help others demonstrates the radiance of joy mentioned in this psalm. Just like David, Tim Tebow faced his own giants, not just on the battlefield and not the giants from New York, but the court of public opinion. His journey reminds us that our battles may be different, but the source of our strength and joy remains the same. Tebow's story is a modern-day parallel to the message of Psalms 34. It's a testament to the fact that when we live out our life and our faith authentically, we can inspire others to make a positive impact, irrespective of the challenges we face. Now, let's take a moment for a little bit of an imaginative journey. I want you to close your eyes if you're comfortable doing so, or if you're not driving or something like that. Breathe deeply and let your mind drift back to a time and place far from our modern world. I want you to imagine yourself in the rugged, rolling hills of ancient Israel. The air is fresh, it's filled with the scents of earth and wildflowers. The sun is beginning to set in the sky, painting a beautiful picture of orange and purple. You're walking along a dusty path, your sandals kicking up little clouds of dust with each step. And as you walk, you come upon a small cave. It's humble, unassuming, but there's something inviting about it. Inside, you see a man. He's not wearing a crown, he's not a king, but a weary traveler seeking refuge. This man is David, a shepherd, a warrior, a musician, and a poet. He's sitting there, his back against the cool wall of the cave, a harp resting beside him. David looks up as you approach. his eyes reflecting a mix of sorrow and hope. He begins to speak, and through his soft voice, it resonates a strength that seems to transcend his circumstances. He's writing Psalms 34. He says, "I prayed to the Lord, and he answered me. He freed me from all my fears. Those who look to him for help will be radiant with joy. No shadow of shame will darken their faces. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Oh, the joys of those who take refuge in him." As you listen to David's words, you feel a sense of peace wash over you. It's as if his trust in God, his unshakable faith amidst his trials, is a tangible force filling the cave that you're in. You realize that the joy and peace that David speaks isn't just for him, it's available to you as well. Now turn your gaze inward. Think of your own fears, your own battles. Maybe they're not against a physical enemy, but they're real nonetheless. As you sit in this ancient cave beside a man who would be king, imagine handing over these fears that you have to God, just as David did. I want you to imagine yourself and feel the weight lifting off your shoulders as you surrender your worries. Let the peace of God's presence fill you, just as it filled David. Imagine your heart becoming radiant with joy, free from the shadows of shame and doubt. Now slowly bring your focus back to us in the present. Open your eyes when you're ready. Carry this sense of peace and joy with you. Remember, just as David found refuge and strength in God, so can you in every step of your life's journey. I want to read these verses one more time. I prayed to the Lord, and he answered me. He freed me from all my fears. Those who look to him for help will be radiant with joy. Taste and see that the Lord is good, and the joys of those who take refuge in him. No shadow of shame will darken their faces. As we reflect on these insights, let's take one more moment to connect with the heart of these verses through prayer. Dear Lord, thank you for the timeless truths in Psalm 34. In our moments of fear and uncertainty, help us turn to you, knowing that you are our refuge and strength. Thank you, my friends, for watching and listening to this video. I hope these verses have impacted your day today for the positive. If they had, I would encourage you to subscribe to this channel to help us continue growing this community. So in closing, thank you, my friends, for watching and listening to this video. I hope these verses help you throughout your day today. And if they did, I would encourage you to drop a comment down below with your testimony. And when you're down there, consider subscribing so we can continue growing this community.